Yeah.
No, hey?
Yeah. I don't know.
Just a patch on the
I think
side?
So, it's just up here.
So, coffee's ready for you. Help yourself. And I realized my shirt is got a bit of green in it, so I'm a little transparent tonight, or translucent.
Well, you're pretty cool guy, then.
Well, I'm pretty transparent as it is, Dylan, so at least a try. Hey, that's beans and, not beans, that's stew and biscuits for you. So it just came out of our fridge, so. Beef stew and biscuits. Yeah, no. There's no beans in it. Just beans and biscuits are the one that made sense to me. And Lena, there's boiling water and hot chocolate for you. And Henry, there's coffee for you. And there is a flat circle of squares. Hey, Arlen, in the fridge as well. All right, the crew is off to get snacks, and we will wait for them to return. Need a coffee, Harlan? There's a pot just fresh made. Pot's not big enough, Myrtle? We'll have to make a second one, or?
What?
Pot not big enough? Is there enough for everyone?
I don't know.
Joyce, do you want to grab those squares out of the fridge? It's a round Tupperware container. I think they're left over from Saturday.
What is that?
There's another tray also, Dylan, beside the microwave. Okay.
What is that? Well, let's not leave this here, let's just take this with us.
We bring it over there.
Then we need to take
Sure,
it over
we'll just
there.
bring it to the table.
Where are these from, yeah?
Left over from Saturday. Oh, you want to hand those out, Dan? Thanks. If you're watching us, hopefully you've been able to download the PDF that is on Facebook. If not, just kind of follow along.
How much can I hear?
Fair amount, actually.
Ran out of Nicholson pills? Joint pills.
Your joint pills?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a place in Kindersley that can help you with that.
What's wrong with your knees?
They didn't hurt.
That's how good glucosamine is.
Now, whether it's from that or whether it's from playing hockey, I don't know. Because that's what started hurting when I played for a couple of years.
You need to get a couple knee replacements.
Apparently it's all the rage. The kids are doing it these days. Knees, it's all.
Bonnie's doing it.
Yeah, Bonnie's doing it. Kenny did it. Bonnie did it. All the cool kids are getting new knees. Myrtle got a knee. It's all the cool kids. Doug needs one. He's got
Doug
one.
needs a knee or two.
Oh, Danny. Yeah. Get your bionic
That
parts.
is
And
your bag there, Henry. No, Henrina's bag.
you're settled, Myrtle. You got your.
I'm gonna get a napkin.
Oh, actually,
Right there,
on the
Merle.
table here,
Right there.
On the table.
Thank you.
I already thought about it.
Oh, homework.
What's that, Myrtle?
Homework.
No homework. All right, let me ask you.
Did you put in your tea?
What's wrong?
French vanilla tea? It says right on there.
You
French
put vanilla creamer in your tea?
French vanilla.
Got powder. I didn't look, I just thought, oh, this here's more creamer.
Oh, yeah, no,
Just
get a
quite
fresh
often
cup.
times She
Wait,
comes
it
home from the
is
grocery
that
store with
Yeah.
strange things.
Throw
I
it
didn't-
out.
I didn't look.
Yeah. That's what she said about you. I didn't look, it was strange.
That's okay.
All right, how do we respond to evil? What's, maybe not yours, but what's the general response? How does society, people, you, the dog, whatever it is?
Society?
Yeah, how do we
They
respond?
celebrate it?
Okay, one of the ways we can deal with evil is we can actually celebrate evil. Yeah, sure, and we do that a lot in all kinds of places. Good. How else do we respond to evil?
Anger.
Anger,
Sadness.
sadness, grief, yep, good. What's that, look away? We can ignore it? You say it's not there? Take a stand against it? Protest? What other ways do we deal with evil?
Ignore
What's that choice?
it. Ignore it.
Ignore it. How does society, as a society, deal with evil?
Oh, we get mad too.
We get mad? Absolutely.
Look
Hard.
at
Yeah.
Putin.
Yeah, people just get mad, right?
How we deal with it legally.
Legally, right. We create laws, right?
Sure.
We create laws and institutions that suppress evil. We decide as a society what is evil, and we say, okay, that's wrong or evil or makes for a bad society, whatever language you want to use. And then we pass legislation and we create enforcement, right? So that we have a path where we all agree this is what's wrong and how we're going to deal with it. How do we deal with it on a personal level? Well, we get angry, we sometimes ignore it, or we might strike out against it. Anybody watch the Oscars this week? Yeah.
Take that as stage.
I don't know. Body language, people say it isn't, but
I did. It was pretty funny. Ha ha ha. Oh wait, no, that's not funny.
yeah, that's not funny. So we might take, a stand, and we just might actually strike out against it. Yeah, there's all kinds. How do we, as Christians, when we see evil, what are we called to? How are we called to confront it?
Biblically.
Biblically, good. That's the Sunday school answer, and that would be how?
Stand up.
Stand up.
Stand up against it, resist it.
Yeah.
Call it what it is.
Call it what else? What's another thing? What did Jesus say?
Pray it. Pray about it.
Pray about it. But he also said, if your enemy
Slap my ass, see it, turn the other cheek.
turn the other cheek. One of the ways we're supposed to respond to evil is turn the other cheek, to not resist evil.
So we get two slap cheeks.
Well, is that
You get-
evil or injustice?
If your enemy strikes you, I'm going, that's probably evil, but, yeah. It's also unjust, but yeah. That's a good question, Dylan. Is injustice always evil, and is
I don't
evil
think we're
always
supposed to turn our cheek to evil.
Yeah,
I think injustice and, I think that's more personal, or maybe not personal, but more persecution.
yes, and
To
again,
being-
yeah.
It's good to be, smacked around for doing good, right?
Yeah,
I can't remember
yeah.
what that verse is, right? It's-
Well, First Peter says, yeah,
Yeah,
don't be.
and we were just in it not long ago.
Exactly.
It's just in the back of my mind.
All right, tonight we are going to look at the most evil nation around. Like this is just plain evil. When you think of evil nations, who do you think of? Russia, yeah. As of late, people are thinking a lot about Russia as an evil nation.
North Korea.
North Korea, China. They're listening. Like,
This is life.
all this stuff is from there.
All our phones.
Yeah, all your phones are from at least
Chinatown.
Finland, maybe if you got a good one. If you got a Nokia, you got a one from Finland. But
Yikes.
yeah. All right. When you think of corrupted, evil nations, what comes to mind? What kind of practices?
Bribes.
Bribery. Yeah.
Carbon taxes.
Carbon taxes. Injustice. What else comes to mind when you think of evil nations? War.
War, absolutely.
Yeah. Against the innocent. Oppression.
Oppression.
Oppression,
Yeah.
yeah.
Squashing the people. Right.
Stealing.
Stealing from the people, yeah. Unjust tax systems, right? High police presence, those kind of things, all become evil. All right, well, we're going to look at the book of Nahim. So before you turn your Bibles open, we're going to do a little bit of background tonight. Introduction. All right, his name means comfort, because his mission was less. This is the first book we look at where nobody picks on Israel. Usually all the prophets have, who have they been lambasting? The poor children of Israel, right? Idolatrous and evil and corrupt and woe you prophets. And this time the page gets turned, and this is the first book that we look at where the prophet goes up against somebody else, and Israel goes, whew, they finally went up against somebody else. Who did Jonah go up against?
Nineveh.
And that's who Nahim went up against. So Nineveh repented and continued on, but now God's done with that. It's now time to punish Nineveh.
So they didn't stay on the straight and narrow.
They sure did not. They went off about as far, and as we see,
'Cause this is after Jonah.
Right, this is, yeah, substantially after, yep, things are gonna go bad. So Nahum celebrates the fall of Nineveh in 612.
Over 100 years later.
Yep, the capital of Assyria, which was a superpower. All right,
So Jonah wouldn't have been around to,
no,
Enjoy that.
which is really too bad, eh?
he'd have been so bummed.
Yeah, like, oh, I was right the whole time.
Yeah.
So they got it. All right. Just a warning tonight, we are going to read some very graphic things, which, we're all adults here, and because all the sources we're reading are either primary sources or straight from the Bible, but it's going to get a little graphic. So Joyce will give you the first one if you want to read chapter 3, verse 1.
An oracle concerning Nineveh, the book of the vision of Nahim the
Oh, chapter 3?
Chapter 3, I'm on
Yeah,
one, sorry.
that's okay.
Woe to the city of blood, full of lies, full of plunder, never without victims.
Good. So what is the description? Leader, what's leader's motto? Do we have a motto?
It's not
I
the
know
it's not the
Swiftcurd
city.
is a city that makes sense, but.
Yeah,
Where
they
life
paid
makes sense.
$15,000 to a guy from Calgary to come up with that. 15 grand. They brought this expert in from Calgary University, and they came up with where life makes sense. And he said, well, that makes sense, pay me. Like 15 grand. So, and Kindersley is the gas city?
The gas city.
That's
No, that's
Medicine
Medicine
Hat.
That's
Is
Medicine
it?
Hat.
Medicine Hat.
Oh, something about our energy, but Kindersley is embrace our energy, or doesn't matter.
It's
So,
something like that, yeah.
what is Nineveh's title according to Nahum?
City of
blood.
The City of Blood. Right. All right, Dan, if you would read for us 3, 5 to 7.
5. I am against you, declares the Lord Almighty. I will lift your skirts over your face. I will show the nations your nakedness and the kingdoms your shame. I will pelt you with filth. I will treat you with contempt and make you a spectacle. All who see you will flee from you and say, Nineveh is in ruins. Who will mourn for her? Where can I find anyone to comfort you?
So this is, go ahead,
I was
Dylan.
gonna say, I bet you that's where the VeggieTales got the fish thing, because they said, I will pelt you with filth, not
Filth,
with
not with
fish.
fish.
But
Yeah.
it's
VeggieTales
almost the
softened
same,
this.
Yeah, I will pelt you with fish.
If Nineveh was a woman, God, this is graphic. I mean, lifts her skirt, she's buck naked, and they throw manure on her.
Well,
That's the image that's contained within this passage. So again, this book is very graphic about God's dealing with the people of Nineveh. So the message of the text is less, we must change what we're doing to prevent further bad things, more than we're doing things right, the world contains evil, but we're good, and in the future we'll be rewarded for unwavering in the face of the world's evil. So Israel is encouraged for her righteousness, and Nineveh is punished for her evil. So it's a bit of a switch here. Nineveh just says, Nahum just says, Nineveh is going to be destroyed, and it is God who's going to do it. Assyria is evil, and the destruction proves that things are going to get better for us, and we're the good guys. It's actually a pretty positive book. So, for Israel at least, but not for Assyria. So the big question the book confronts us is, what do we do when evil befalls a nation, when they are destroyed? All right, let's take a look. What do you think? What do you know about the Assyrians? What comes to mind when you think of Assyria? Assyria is a country today, by the way. Yeah. Anything in your history book?
They're somewhere in the 5. In your-
Yeah, they're the first ones. A.B., Assyria, Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome. So they're the first of the big 5 bad guys.
I just remember this and the
Very
little,
good.
I don't, that's all I know.
Yeah.
There's no word I can put with it or a little song.
Just the hand, yeah.
Yeah, just the
We'll have to
hand
come up
and
with a
the
little song.
Talk to the head.
But they're the A in the A-B-P-G-R. Rome.
Oh,
Assyria, Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome.
so were they the first?
They're the first one. They're the first superpower. Assyria is the first big empire to take on the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're the first superpower. All right, flip the page over, and if you don't have your notes, that was kind of cool how that did. It did get thin. This is the Assyrian Empire. If you look down, you'll see Judah and Israel way down here, and you'll see they go all the way up into what's Turkey, and there's the Black Sea, by the way, and the Caspian, so Ukraine's up here, by the way. And all the way down to the Persian Gulf, we get this big empire, part of the called the Golden Horseshoe. Because if you look, what is in the middle of the empire?
The desert.
Desert, close, little lines, which represent
Highways?
rivers.
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 Wow, he gave us every chance in the world.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. If you look at the Persian Gulf, you'll see a line coming up.
Yep.
Those are all rivers.
What are they, that's not what they call the You called it the horseshoe or
The
something.
Golden Horseshoe.
Oh, isn't there something else, the Fertile Valley or?
Fertile Crescent.
The Fertile Crescent, is that?
That's the Fertile
That's the
Crescent,
same
yeah,
thing.
because of all the rivers, right? So in a world of desert, they were fertile
Yep, right.
because of water.
Right.
There's a familiar story, right? Where there's water, there's life. All right. They are a big power in the Mesopotamian area, about the second millennium in BC, so about 2000 BC, and they grow and they grow and they grow under a series of incredibly powerful rulers to become the world's first great empire. They are little agricultural villages that get started out around 6000 BC or so, which makes sense, and then they slowly kind of consolidate into these river valleys. Around 900 BC, these new kings rose and they really began to expand their empire. Why do empires expand? What's the motivation? Greed. Good. Control, power. Good. Why else do you take over people's territory?
Feed your own population.
Feed your own population. Yeah, need more resources, right?
Because it can.
Because they can't? Well, yeah, sometimes they're just jerks. Yeah. The Assyrian king was an interesting guy. They believed that he was the ambassador for God, for Asher, that he spoke on behalf of the gods. And he, matter of fact, of Asher himself. And because the world was chaotic and evil, Asher's task was to bring order to the world. So if you're the source of all that is orderly and good, and your neighbors are barbarians, what do you want to do? You're doing them a favor. Exactly. You're doing good by conquering their territory.
See, this is what we talked about today, Henry, with that colony. They're trying to build a church, but it wasn't the right kind of church. So as they were pouring concrete, they knocked over the forms, because for you to build a church like that would be a sin, right? Because what we believe is right.
Oh.
And
yep.
anything else, but it's the same thing, right?
Wow.
It's the
Yeah,
exact same thing.
that's right. So you've built your civilization, you've
Yep.
laid your foundations,
Yes.
but your civilization is not a good civilization.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
Only ours is.
Only ours is. That's right. Ours is the right civilization.
That's right.
And we're going to bring the good God
Yeah.
to you. So they did evangelism via
Overthrowing.
by
conquering.
By conquering other people. Yeah. So they had the best of motivations. Asher told them, you got to bring order to the world. Therefore, you must conquer the world in my name.
Like you said, the villain that believes he's doing something good.
Is the truth.
Isn't that almost what Putin thinks too, though?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I am bringing good and order. Yeah. Yeah, the worst villain is the guy who thinks he's doing good.
Yeah.
So what about, this is maybe a little later in time, but what about the Crusades? What was that? It wasn't so much squashing, it was squashing evil too, wasn't it?
Well, there's boy.
Maybe this is a bigger.
No, but I'll just make a real short story. Two events really precipitated that. One was bad theology, because Jesus was coming back, and he needed a kingdom to rule, just like all the barons had their kingdoms. And where's Jesus' kingdom? Jerusalem.
Yeah.
So they better set up a kingdom for him there, right?
Okay.
So you had to kick the other people out so that Jesus could have a kingdom. So that's bad theology. But also there were a lot of incursions from people into Spain, Greece, Italy, and it was a pushback politically.
Okay.
Because they'd been invaded so many times, it was pushing back to those invasions never happened again. Let's bring the war to you.
Okay.
So it
So
was.
it wasn't quite going in and stamping out barbarians and evil.
No, it was just getting Jesus' kingdom. There was a bit of revenge and a bit of let's bring the fight to them rather than bring the fight to us all the time. Yeah. So the king, as the main executive officer or the chairman of this group of individuals who kind of ruled the country, he would bring his legal knowledge and his spiritual expertise. The Assyrians saw their empire as being part of the world overseen and administered by Asher through human agents. In their ideology, the outer realm outside was chaos and the people were uncivilized, with unfamiliar cultural practices and strange languages. Therefore, it was the king's duty to expand the realm of Asher and incorporate these strange lands, converting chaos to civilization. So the Assyrians were going to bring civilization to the world. When Hilton, the man who started Hilton Hotels, decided that Americans wanted to travel the world, he knew that Americans didn't want to stay in some little hotel in Germany. When Americans travel, they want to stay in a hotel, in American hotels.
With a pool and a bar.
And American food. So he set up these hotels all over the world so that when Americans could travel, they could hit their Hiltons. Their little bit of civilization. right? So in a sense, I'm not comparing Hilton to the Assyrian Empire, but this whole idea that you have to bring civilization to the world around you. And so, we've done that in our cultural past. We've got to bring civilization to these savage people. And that's exactly what the Assyrians did. We're going to bring civilization to the savage people. Now, if you were to bring civilization to somebody, how would you go about doing it? Education, that's good. Hygiene, water, medicine, how to read and write your language, good. That's a noble. How else? What's that?
Kindness.
Yeah, you might show them the benefits, right? Yeah. How else might you bring civilization to a quote unquote, and again, this is the language of colonization, to uncivilized people?
Yeah, just by showing them.
Yeah, sure. You might send emissaries, missionaries. We're a very, we're double. Well, that's not how the Assyrians chose to do it. They were a little different. The majority of the population of ancient Assyria were farmers. That kind of gives you their society. They had two groups, the slaves and the free, and slavery was just a huge part of their society. They were very artistic, and they have we have remains of their books and their potteries and their architecture. They built beautiful, Babylon, right? The Hanging Gardens of Babylon. They built a beautiful civilization. Beautiful buildings, beautiful architecture, beautiful, we don't know what their music sounded like, but I'm sure for them it was beautiful. But
That's your background. Sorry, is that your background on there?
yes, yeah, it's this picture. So what the Assyrians did, though, to bring civilization to the people, they chose to destroy them. That was kind of their path. We're going to torture everybody, and we're going to bring evil. So they were the masters of cruelty. And again, warning, what you're about to read is strong language. So, Myrtle,
Give Myrtle the
would you read the first little paragraph there?
The Assyrians depicted the torture in great detail on the walls of the imperial palaces. They created tablets containing every single punishment the Assyrian army carried out. They cut off the limbs, gorged out the eyes, and then left those poor victims to roam around. Those poor people serve as a living reminder of the Assyrians' cruelty.
All right, this is when this art style is called a relief. That is, you carve away everything that doesn't look like something, and then it kind of gives you a 3D image. So take a look at that relief in the picture. What's going on there?
Looks like they're pulling that guy's tongue out or something.
I'd say that's probably right. Yep, they're pulling his tongue out. What are they doing to the poor guy on the top?
Ripping his head apart.
Yeah, it looks like they're either they're hitting him with something, or they got a set of tongs, and the other guy's kind of grabbing his beard. So these are the kind of reliefs. So they depicted on all their imperial buildings all their torture.
Good.
So let's take a look at the second section here. Dylan, you want to read the second?
The Assyrians were proud of the mass executions. They loved to impale their victims on large stakes. Such sights instilled terror and fear into the rest of the population. For the Assyrian kings, it was a showcase of their power. The stake was driven into the body under the ribs. The victim's weight caused the spikes to protrude deeper and deeper into the body.
So take a look at the relief next. What do you see there?
Poked under the ribs.
Yeah, so the spike would go here underneath, what is this called, the clavicle?
No, that's your sternum.
Your sternum. So yeah, it would go into the abdomen, into the sternum, and up through the chest, right? So it wouldn't affect your heart, and then the weight would you would slowly slide down.
You would pinch a bit.
Yeah, and it would slowly slide into your torso, up into your throat, and then it would be stopped by your spinal column and your shoulder blades, right? So you just kind of hang there. So this is impalement. So, and again, what do you see in the relief? You see people getting impaled. Joni, next one.
The Assyrian kings were fond of flaying the rebel leaders. The flaying process would start at the thighs or lower legs. They would cut the skin in strips and pull it off the living victim. The victim's skin was hung in a visible place as a reminder for the rest of the citizens.
So, what do you see in the relief next to it? That's what they're doing there. They're starting to flay these people alive. Good. Henry.
This next one?
Yep.
Grinding of bones to erase the memory of ancestors. The Assyrians forced captured nobles to grind the bones of their ancestors. By doing so, they erased the evidence of their
Legitimacy.
To rule this was part of
Psychological.
psychological torture. It showed the absolute power the Assyrian kings had over the subjected nations.
Very good, thanks, Henry. So they would take the bones of the old emperors, the ones that they defeated, and they would force the people to grind their bones into dust.
Yeah, that's psychological
Yeah.
warfare, hey?
So they
like
knew
that's
they were
why-
doing wrong.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we were just getting started, but you're right. Oh, yeah. They know what they're doing is, yeah. The reason we're doing this is we're going to see the foundation of why God destroyed them.
Well,
I-
totally.
Yeah, I want you to see just how evil these people were. Because we often look in the Old Testament, God is, vengeful and evil, going, well, why would he do that? Man, he sure seems mean and awful and cruel. But we don't have a grasp of the cruelty of the societies that they were dealing with. We have, we see a little bit of what's happened in the media with Putin, bombing innocent people and this. But this level of great personalized violence and cruelty, the Assyrians were unique in this, and it's only going to get worse.
And it's not like just some people that kind of wandered off and got it a little bit confused.
Right? Yeah, or
This is just evil.
yeah, or executed their enemies, cut their heads off and be done with it. No, they took great delight.
Right, in different
It-
things, like.
Yeah, and in a
They wanted to make a
variety.
message.
Yeah, and we're just getting started. So again, warning: adult content. All right.
Have to leave now.
Yeah, yeah. Beheading. Soldiers decapitated and defeated their enemies and built pyramids out of their heads. We'll talk about that in a minute. The Assyrians also decorated trees with the heads of their enemies.
Sounds
So
like
you
Christmas.
like Christmas. So you come up to a town and there would be heads hanging in all the trees around. Amputations of limbs, blinding, castrating, burning people alive. They were very creative with their brutality. They would cut off legs, arms, noses, tongues, ears, and testicles. They would gouge out their eyes of their prisoners, and they would burn children alive. So,
That just, you know what, I don't understand. When it comes to kids, I just don't get that.
oh yeah, no.
I don't get that. That takes a special kind of evil
Mm-hmm.
to torture kids.
It sure does. And the Assyrians were a special kind of evil. The next things we're going to read are actually direct quotes from the Assyrians themselves. They're translated in English because most of us don't read Assyrian. Matter of fact, I don't think anybody in the room does. 'Cause I know. So these are translations that were on the hieroglyphs that were written there. So these are dark, and like I say, we're going down a bit of a dark hole. Joyce, you get the first one.
I felled 3,000 of their fighting men with the sword. I carried off prisoners, possessions, oxen, and cattle from them. I burnt many captives from them. I captured many troops alive. From some I cut off their arms and hands. From others I cut off their noses, ears, and extremities. I gouged out the eyes of many troops. I made one pile of the living and one of heads. I hung their heads on trees around the city. I burnt their adolescent boys and girls. I razed, destroyed, burned, and consumed the city.
So this is just one of their kings, right? He's saying, this is what I did to the glory of the empire.
Tough guy.
Yeah. All right, Dan, you get the next one.
I flayed as many nobles as had rebelled against me and draped their skins over the pile of corpses. Some I spread out within the pile, some I erected on stakes upon the pile. I flayed many right through my land and draped their skins over the walls.
So they would execute their prisoners, they would cut their skin off, and then they would lay the skin on the walls so that people going by would see the skin of their enemies on the walls. All right, Myrtle, you get the next cheery note here.
I felled 50 of their fighting men with the sword, burned 200 captives from them, and they defeated in a battle on the plain 332 troops. With their blood I dyed the mountain red like a red wool, and the rest of them the ravines and thorns of the mountain swallowed. I carried off captives and possessions from them. I cut off the heads of their fighters and built therewith a tower before their city. I burnt their adolescent boys and girls.
So I
Who's
made,
coming up after him.
yeah, I made the mountains red like wool. And then he says, and I built this tower of heads, and on I went. Good, Dylan, not good, but thank you. Dylan.
I cut their throats like lambs. I cut off their precious lives as one cuts a string. Like the many waters of a storm, I made the contents of their gullets and entrails run down upon the wide earth. My prancing steeds harnessed for my riding plunged into the streams of their blood as into a river. The wheels of my war chariot, which brings low the wicked and the evil, were bespattered with blood and filth. With the bodies of their warriors I filled the plain like grass. Their testicles I cut off and tore out their privates like the seeds of cucumbers.
So, but did you notice in there what he says? That I did this to the wicked and the evil.
Yep.
I didn't notice that.
Billy's doing good.
So what do they think they're doing?
Noble thing.
Noble things. We read this with a cringe and a discomfort. When they read this,
They were proud of it.
they were proud. I defeated the evil and the wicked. Look how good I did. I did all this good. Now we know it's not. But I did all this good, and they're writing it, and people are going, good on you, King. You know, yeah. All right, Joni, you get the last one.
After Banapho,
Sure, don't worry about the big names. This is his son.
son boasted, their dismembered bodies I fed to the dogs, swine, wolves, and eagles, to the birds of heaven and the fish in the deep. What was left of the feast of the dogs and swine, of their members which blocked the streets and filled the squares, I ordered them to remove from Babylon Cusa
Yeah.
and Sippar, and cast them upon heads.
So, how many bodies were there?
Lots.
There were lots.
Thousands.
Thousands. They blocked the streets and filled the squares. So you couldn't travel through the city. There were so many dead bodies, they blocked the streets and filled the squares. And he says, and so I carted their bodies off. Right? All right, what's your response when you read those descriptions?
Total disgust. And
Total disgust, yeah.
Discomfort.
Yeah, it's very uncomfortable, isn't
Child
it?
reading it.
Yeah,
Makes you want to hurt some people.
makes you want to hurt some.
Very painful.
Very painful,
It's
yeah.
gotta be that's just an absolute super special place for these people. Man.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Assyrians were a special kind of evil.
My goodness,
And their history is the story of unimaginable creative cruelty, like beyond imagination. Well, no, sadly, within our imagination to some degree, right? But this level of cruelty, but it was perpetuated at the highest levels of government. It wasn't just some random guy, We have serial killers and people who do cruelty. But at no point does our government,
endorsing it.
yeah, saying, yeah, this is great. We all go, you did that to those people, right? We feel shame when that happens. So you can feel when Jonah didn't want to prophesy.
Were they as bad?
Oh yeah.
Because obviously they turned from their evil ways.
Yeah, that
for a
shifted.
period of time.
Yeah.
But they were that bad even. No wonder Jonah didn't.
Yeah. Jonah says, I don't want these people to repent and
Now
not
I
be
don't blame
punished.
them no more.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like you actually feel for Jonah because he goes, these are just these horrible people.
Ninevites were Assyrians.
Yeah, Nineveh is the capital of Assyria.
Now I understand why he wanted God to just let him die.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Why Jonah flees.
I'm with Jonah.
Like Jonah says, he says, I would rather die
Yeah,
and lose my role as prophet than allow them to repent.
yeah.
So, yeah.
That gives you a little perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jonah's not a coward. He's not disobedient. He's saying, God, do you know who these people are? Like, of course they do, right?
Yeah.
He says, and if I preach and they repent, then God will, because I know that you're merciful and just and forgiving and kind and loving, and you will not punish them.
But these people don't deserve it.
Yeah, and these people don't deserve your mercy and your kindness. And along comes Nahim, and he says, justice is coming, and it's on anyway because of these kind of things. All right, take a look at the next relief on the next page. Okay, 2 reliefs there for you to look at.
The Tower of Heads.
Yes, what do you see in the first one? Tower of Heads, good. And what do you see in the bottom one? Another stack of heads. Yeah, a bunch of heads down stacked up. Go to 2 Kings chapter 10. We're going to read the first 11 verses.
That was awful close. I love it when that happens. You just grab a chunk
Nice
of
when you
like
land.
3 pages off. I'm just so tuned with my Bible.
2 Kings chapter 10.
Finger.
Sometimes my Bible was in one of the books.
All right, there is a fellow named Jehu, and Jehu is the king of Israel, and he is God's justice. He assassinates Ahaziah. He gets he indirectly kills Jezebel. If you go back to 9:33, he says, "Throw Jezebel down." So they threw her down, and some of her blood was sprinkled on the wall and the horses, and he trampled her underfoot. So Jehu's horse tramples her, and when he came, he ate and drank and said, "See now to this cursed woman and bury her, for she is a king's daughter." They went to bury her, but they found nothing more than the skull and the feet and the palms of her hands, because the dogs had eaten it all. Therefore they returned and told him, "This is the word of the Lord, which he had spoken to the servant Elijah. In the property of Jezreel, the dogs shall eat the flesh of Jezebel, and the corpse of Jezebel will be dung on the face of the field." Anyhow, this is Jezebel. So this is Jehu. Jehu's a warrior king, and he's bringing justice. Okay, that's the backstory of Jehu. Let's take a look at chapter 10, the first 11 verses. Now Ahab, remember King Ahab? He was a bad dude, right? That's Jezebel's husband. Ahab had 70 sons in the northern kingdom of Samaria. And Jehu wrote letters and sent them to Samaria, to the rulers of Jezreel, the elders and the guardians of the children of Ahab. There were 70 kids. He had a lot of sons, 70 by the way. Now, when this letter comes to you, since your master's sons are with you, as well as the chariots and the horses and the fortified city and the weapons, select the best and the fittest of your master's sons and set him on his father's throne and fight for your master's house. He says, you know what? We'll be fair. You pick the best dude, stick him on the throne, and we'll go at it, and we'll see who wins. So he's pretty upfront. But they feared greatly and said, "Behold, the 2 kings did not stand before Jehu. How can we stand?" And one who was over the household, and he was over the city, the elders and the guardians and the children, sent the word to Jehu, saying, "We are your servants. All that you say to us we will do. We will not make any man king. Do what is good in your sight." Then he wrote a letter the second time, said, "If you're on my side, and you will listen to my voice, take the heads of the men, your master's sons," the 70 heads, "and come to me at Jezreel tomorrow about this time." Now the king's sons, 70 persons, were with the great men of the city, who were rearing them. When the letter came to them, they took the king's sons and slaughtered them, 70 persons, and put their heads in baskets, and sent them to Jezreel. When the messenger came and said, "They have brought the heads of the king's sons," he said, "Put them into 2 piles at the entrance of the gate until morning." Now in the morning he went out and stood and said to the people, "You are innocent. Behold, I conspired against my master and killed him. But who killed all these? Now then, that there shall fall on the earth nothing of the word of the Lord." And it goes on. So, verse 11, so Jehu killed all that remained in the house of Ahab, and on it went.
See,
So, what did Jehu want?
Obedience.
A pile of heads. He wanted a pile of heads outside the city gate, and they gave him to him, 70 heads. So this was a common practice. Why? Why would you put a pile of heads outside your enemy's city?
The message.
sending a
The
message.
message. Exactly. And the message is,
Don't mess with me.
don't exactly.
This is like the mafia.
Like the mafia. This is barbarism. Yeah, violence at its worst, but it's very clear. That's called
Effective.
psychological warfare, right? And the Assyrians were the masters of psychological warfare. Yeah. What they would often do is they would cut off the thumbs and the big toes of their enemies. Why?
Can't grab anything.
Can't grab anything,
You got no
and
balance.
you can't balance. You can walk, but you can't run. You can hobble along, but you can't pick up a sword. You can't do anything. But you're just hobbling. You're just done. Yeah. So this is the Assyrian. These are the Assyrians. This level of, and they were successful for a very practical reason. We're going to get into the book of Nahim soon, but they were successful for a very practical reason. Where are we up to for readers? Harlan. Harlan. Oh, hey, can you do? Oh, did Henry just read the last one?
No, Myrtle just did.
Oh, Myrtle did. Who did?
Didn't Myrtle just read?
I read the last one.
Oh, hey, Harlan, it's up to you then. Can you read this paragraph here for us? It's this paragraph here.
The Assyrians had several advantages that they had been developing for generations while other empires came and went. They were the first in the area to develop iron weapons, which were superior to the bronze weapons their enemies were using. Their skill at ironworking allowed them to make weapons and protective items more cheaply, so more soldiers could use them. In addition, they were the first army to have separate engineering units, which would set up ladders and ramps, filled in boats, and dig tunnels to help the soldiers get into a walled city. They're also among the first to build chariots, which provide greater protection to the battlefield. These technologies advancements allowed the Assyrians to go on the offense and attack neighboring areas were south, which led to the expansion of their empire.
Good, thank you, Robin. So, what technical advantage did they have?
Chariots and iron.
Chariots and iron. Iron is far better than bronze, right? Bronze is soft, and iron is solid, right? So they had iron weapons. And this was, and so the Bible talks about iron swords and lots of bronze swords, but the Assyrians developed iron technology because they had access to resources. And as a result, their army was undefeatable. They had tanks when no one else did. They developed the chariot, right, which is a terror weapon. And in the picture below, this is just an example. They had huge in archery. So you'll see they worked in pairs. One guy held the spear and the shield while the other guy shot. So one guy acted as the defensive agent while the other guy was able to use the bow. They also used mass cavalry, and they operated in pairs as well. So one guy would ride and he would hold the reins of the other guy's horse while they rode, and then that guy would shoot bows. So they had mobile artillery, so to speak, yeah. So technically, these weren't dumb people by any stretch, right? They were militarily superior to all their neighbors. They had better industry. They had better agriculture. They were just a superpower, long before superpowers existed. But for all that, they didn't last. Which brings us to the book of Nahum. All right. It was to these people that Nahum prophesied. Nahum, it means comfort or compassion, and it's a unique book because it is the most artistic and poetic books of the prophets. He and Isaiah are considered the greatest of the poets of the prophets, which is a strange thought to think. You know, here he is about doom and gloom and death, but it's an incredible book of poetry. So, just for a couple of comparisons, Joyce, I'll get you to do Nahum 1:4, and then Danny, you can do the Isaiah 33:19. Hey, Mike, you missed all the blood. And Myrtle, Nahum 1:15, and Dylan, Isaiah 52:7.
I'm 1:4.
Yes.
He rebukes the sea and dries it up. He makes all the rivers run dry. Bashan and Carmel wither, and the blossoms of Lebanon fade.
Okay, and then Danny, you want to read?
33:19.
Yep.
You will see those arrogant people no more, those people of an obscure speech with their strange, incomprehensible tongue.
52:7, you said?
Yep. That's Isaiah 33:19?
Yeah, it's Isaiah 33:19.
Okay, good.
See those
Nahum
arrogant
1:15.
Nahum 1:15?
Look, there on the mountains the feet of one who brings good news, who proclaims peace. Celebrate your festivals, O Judah, and fulfill your vows. No more will the wicked invade you. They will be completely destroyed.
Good. And then Dylan, Isaiah 52:7.
How beautiful on the mountains are the feet of those who bring good news, who proclaim peace, who bring good tidings, who proclaim salvation, who say to Zion, your God reigns.
So poetic parallels, right? Images are inferior. So Isaiah and Nahum, they're the poetic prophets, and they share a lot in common. But the irony is that they are the poetic prophets of what?
Opposite people.
Yeah, exactly. And they're the poetic prophets of blood. Like
Yeah.
they are full of doom despite their poetry. So, and then chapter 1, verse 2 to 8, an acrostic psalm is, remember when you did let's do a Mother's Day. M is for mother. O is for always being there. T is for the love. H is for happy. E is for everything she does. R is I really love you. I really love you.
Really love
So
you.
that's an acrostic poem.
Love it, Dan.
Off the top of my head, there you
Good
go.
job.
What is, spell
Amazing.
always.
A is for always? Is
He
that?
said, oh, it's for always.
Yeah, exactly. O is for always. And R is for really love you. Look, it's off the top of my head. Give me a break. Pretty good. Yeah, really good. So, chapter 1, verse 2 is the same thing. A is for this, B is for this, C is for the. He uses the Hebrew alphabet, so it's poetry. It's bloody poetry, but it's poetry, needless to say.
Bloody poetry.
Yeah, I used to like poetry. Danny, still got your finger in Isaiah?
I will.
Okay, do you want to read Isaiah 10:5?
10:5. Woe to the Assyrian, the rod of my anger, in whose hand is the club of my wrath.
All right. God called Assyria what?
The club of his
The
wrath.
club of his wrath.
Which makes him sound like a weapon.
Yes.
The Assyrians sound like a weapon.
Yeah. God used the Assyrians to take care of the northern 10 tribes.
But he says, woe to the Assyrian.
Yeah, woe to you, because you're just my dumb weapon in my hand.
Huh.
So there's a strange little mix. God says, woe to you, I'm going to use you for the destruction of Israel.
Didn't I kind of talk about that a couple months ago about the being grafted into the,
Yeah.
Yeah.
we're kind of to make the other jealous.
Yeah.
really.
So Assyria kind of has Assyria has and Israel, this is the next part we're going to look at, is their relationship together. So now you kind of know who the Assyrians were. Let's talk about their relationship with Israel. All right. The first recorded event occurs between good old Jehu, whom we just read, and in 841, the Assyrian king, by the guy by the name of Shalmaneser III, forced Israel to pay tribute. So rather than conquering, what did the Assyrians want?
We want stuff.
Why would they only want money from Israel instead of conquering it? Take a look at the map. Why wouldn't you
Long ways
conquer?
away.
Long ways. Too far away.
Too far.
Too far to administer, right? You can't send mail, there's no telegraph. Best thing you can do is just say, give me money. So that's why they give you
We'll
tribute.
just tax you.
Yeah, exactly, because you're too far away.
It's a better business plan.
So this continues against under King Adonirara, and then the city of Damascus is captured, and King Joash is forced to pay tribute. So we get, again, they're not conquering Israel, they're just rolling in, they beat them up for a while, and they bully them, they extort them.
Give me your milk money.
Give me your milk money, and then they go back to Assyria, and then that's exactly what happens. But then they get enough, the Israelites keep rebelling, and the big invasion happens, and this is when Israel goes into captivity. Merlin, you want to look up 2 Kings 15:29? Dylan, 1 Chronicles 5:6. Joni, 2 Chronicles 3:6 and 10. And Harlan, Isaiah 9, verse 1. They're all right there in front of you if you need them.
Second Kings, what was it?
15:29. Yeah, 15:29.
Want me to read it now?
Please do.
In the time of Pekah, king of Israel, Tilgath-Pilneser, king of Assyria, came and took Ijon, Abel met. Oh my goodness.
You named your son Wes, didn't you? One word, simple.
He took Gilead and Galilee, including all the land of Naphtali, and deported the people of Assyria.
Good. So he came down, took all the Israelites, sent them off to Assyria. Dylan, 1 Chronicles 5:6.
5:6. And Bera his son, whom Tiglath-Pileser,
There you go.
king of Assyria, took into exile. Bera was the leader of the Reubenites.
Good. So it takes the tribe of Reuben, boop, off they go. Joni, 2 Chronicles 30, verse 6. We're not going to read all these, there's lots here, but we'll just do this one section. 2 Chronicles 30, verse 6.
At the king's command, couriers went throughout Israel and Judah with letters from the king and from his officials, which read, People of Israel, return to the Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, that he may return to you who are left, who have escaped from the hand of the kings of Assyria.
Good. And then verse 10.
The couriers went from town to town in Ephraim and
Manasseh.
Manasseh, as far as Zebulun,
It's a tough night to read, isn't it?
but people scorned and ridiculed them.
So these couriers are going saying, repent, repent, because the Assyrians are coming, and they get made fun of. Harlan, Isaiah 9:1.
Nevertheless, that time of darkness and despair shall not go for forever. Though soon the land of Zebulun and Nephilah will be under God's contempt and judgment. Yet in the future there will be very lands in Galilee and northern Jordan.
Good.
Where
There
the
were-
lands of the road to the sea will be filled with the glory.
Good. In other words, Don't give up. God's going to restore you. All right. So we see the first invasion under Tiglath-Pileser, and he comes along, and the people get warned, and they say, oh, it's not going to happen. So Hoshea tried to ally Israel with Egypt. Again, if you look on the map, it makes sense. But he was invaded by Shalmaneser V. Samaria, Israel's capital, fell after a 3-year siege against Sargon II, and we're not going to read all those verses.
Sargon. That sounds like an alien.
Is that a great name? I am Sargon II.
I am Sargon.
Yeah.
That does sound like.
That's a good Assyrian name. Israel gets exiled. Sargon II invaded and forced the southern tribe to give him tribute as well. So under the Assyrians, the northern 10 tribes get taken away into captivity and disappear. They're the diaspora. They're gone. In Judah, King Hezekiah, who succeeded Ahaz, he pays a little bit of tribute, but then he refuses to pay tribute. Judah gets invaded by a guy named Sennacherib, but was forced to withdraw because of a plague caused by the angel of the Lord, which killed 185 Assyrian soldiers. So they get their comeuppance. Later on, Hezekiah's son Manasseh was forced to submit to a guy named Ezarhaddon, and Ezarhaddon's sons, Ashurbanipal, that's a good name, was the last strong king of Assyria after his death during a tragic period of decline. And then we get all these guys, and look at the guy's last name. Somebody want to get that one? Cyaxaxes. What are you going to name your daughter? I think that's what you're going for. Cyaxaxaxes. And she'll just call me Cy.
Yeah.
But I think that would be, if I had a kid, I would name him Cyaxaxaxes. That's 3 A's, 2 X's, and a C for you.
And a silent Y.
And a silent Y. Anyhow. All right. The point being,
Into Google.
Nineveh falls to a new kingdom. Dun, dun, dun. Enter the Babylonians. So they get, remember, A, B, Assyria, Babylon. Babylonians coming. All right, we're just going to read a few verses in chapter 1. All right, with all that as background. Part 1, Assyrians are
Evil.
Right. Evil.
That's why Jonah didn't want to go.
Yeah, there's going to be a bigger word than evil. Sadistic, mean, cruel, cutting off noses and ears, piles of dead heads, and the one that Dylan read about cucumber seeds.
That was one really kind of makes
I know, I gave that one to you.
tangles a little bit. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
pulling out your private parts like cucumber seeds. You think about a cucumber and getting that's a lot of little things coming out of mush. That's not good. Like that's not.
They
good.
ripped out their testicles.
You do that, you do that.
The cucumber seeds.
Well, the Assyrians,
The Assyrians did it.
That's what they did. That's the kind of people we're dealing
You
with.
didn't pay your taxes.
Yeah.
It is torture.
Oh yeah, this is torture at a well, show Mike the pictures.
Not if you showed up late for Bible study.
put it on a steak, they drive right up.
through the stomach into the sternum and no, not this. What's this called?
Sternum.
Your sternum, yeah, up through your sternum.
We're considering disciplinary policies.
Disciplinary.
Yeah. So
It's like a shish kebab.
yeah, it is, except with hundreds of
It'd
people.
be like a shishkamite.
Later on, by the way, a guy in Eastern Europe named Vlad took these same policies, and outside his cities, he would impale people. And he was known as Vlad the Impaler, a.k.a. Count Dracula. Yes, Vlad the Impaler was Count Dracula.
Really?
Because he would impale people on stakes around his cities. So that's where Dracula comes from. Yeah, Count Dracula. Yeah, stakes. And that's the whole stakes thing. Yeah, he was called Vlad the, my name is Vlad the Impaler. You know, that's really a cheery name for
So
a king.
where is he from? Sorry.
He's like Eastern Europe somewhere.
Transylvania.
Transylvania. I think he's in Romania, actually. Yeah. No, I think he is Who's got their phone? Henry, look up Vlad the Impaler, and where's he from? I think he is from Transylvania. Vlad the Impaler. I think he's Transylvania.
Vlad the Impaler.
From some weird thing.
Former, what? Voivode of Wallachia.
Which is where,
I don't know.
Voivod.
as we pause for this
Romania.
weird...
Born in 1431.
Yeah, he's Romania.
Sighisoara, Romania.
This
Yeah.
is Romania.
He's
you feel
Romanian.
like,
Yeah. which has got to be near
Wife was
Transylvania.
Justina, and he was assassinated.
Yeah, they didn't like him. But anyhow, that's where Dracula
It
comes
is
from.
called
Nickname.
Dracula, and Vlad
So it's not a made-up person, it's-
No, he was a real guy. Yeah, Count Dracula was a real guy.
That's really hard to read.
Dracula.
Yeah, he was a real guy. And he was really a sicko. So,
Wait,
Did you say he's a sicko?
sicko, like he was.
look at him.
He looks sick.
Oh yeah, he's classic. Yeah, with the mustache and he wears red. Like he looks like Dracula.
Very pasty, big
Yeah.
eyes,
Big eyes, pasty.
right?
So that's where the legend of Dracula comes from. All right, well, back on track here. Get back in your Bible here to Nahum. We're just looking at the first chapter, and we got just a few minutes.
Keep it together, Dan. Keep it together.
More useless information. But that's the impaling.
He was looking at him.
There's been a lot of poking things in heads tonight.
A lot of gross tonight. All right, we're just going to read the first chapter. Here we go. Let's. Well, we all do like 3 verses. Joyce, chapter 1, verse 1 to 3.
An oracle concerning Nineveh, the book of the vision of Nahim the Elkoshite. The Lord is a zealous and avenging God. The Lord takes vengeance and is filled with wrath. The Lord takes vengeance on his foes and maintains his wrath against his enemies.
Okay, I'll just stop here. In light of who Assyria was, are you comfortable with this verse? The Lord is an avenging.
Well, they wouldn't be, but
No, they would be, but from our side of the equation, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And yet, verse 3, Joyce.
The Lord is slow to anger and great in power. The Lord will not leave the guilty unpunished. His way is in the whirlwind and the storm, and clouds are the dust of his feet.
All right. God had been slow and patient with Nineveh, giving them opportunity to repent under Jonah. But they chose their wicked ways.
His way is in the whirlwind and the storm.
Yep.
That's interesting.
God
And
rides
the
in
clouds are the dust of his feet.
Yeah.
That's an interesting quote.
It's an interesting matter. Remember, this guy's the poet, right? Okay, Danny, 4, 5, and 6.
he rebukes the sea and dries it up. He makes all the rivers run dry. Bashan and Carmel wither.
These are mountains.
And the blossoms of Lebanon fade. The mountains quake before him and the hills melt away. The earth trembles at his presence, the world and all who live in it. Who can withstand his indignation? Who can endure his fierce anger? His wrath is poured out like fire. The rocks are shattered before him.
All right. So who is coming to deal with the Assyrians?
The hill melter.
The hill melter is coming. You betcha. It's the one who breaks the rocks and melts the hills, the hill melter. Good. Myrtle, 7, 8, and 9.
The Lord is good, a refuge in times of trouble. He cares for those who trust in him, but with an overwhelming flood, he will make an end of Nineveh. He will pursue his foes into darkness. Whatever they plot against the Lord, he will bring to an end. Trouble will not come a second time.
God's going to clear up.
I won't say this again.
Now, exactly. Yeah. Did you hear me the first time?
Sounds like
Now,
a strict parent.
Sounds like at our house. I'm not warning you twice.
notice this, but this book is written to the Israelites, right? So he knows those who take refuge in him. He says, I know who you are. You're the ones who take refuge in me, but not your enemies. All right. Dylan, 10, 11, 12.
10, 11, 12. They will be entangled among thorns and drunk from their wine. They will be consumed like dry stubble. From you, O Nineveh, has one come forth who plots evil against the Lord and counsels wickedness. This is what the Lord says. Although they have allies and are numerous, they will be cut off and pass away. Although I have afflicted you, O Judah, I will afflict you no more.
So God says,
One says destroy and pass
Yeah.
away.
they are full of strength. Remember, their armies, they had iron weapons. They were the most powerful nation on earth. But God said it's not going to stop them. I will come and I am bringing destruction with me. Okay, Joni, 13, 14, 15.
Now I will break their yoke from your neck and tear your shackles away. The Lord has given a command concerning you, Nineveh. You will have no descendants to bear your name. I will destroy the images and idols that are in the temple of your gods. I will prepare your grave, for you are vile.
Good. God says, I'm going to do what?
I'm going to wipe you off the face of the
Yeah,
earth.
I'm getting your grave ready.
I'm going to grind your bones to make my bread.
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds like
Good. Harlan, verse 15.
See the messengers come running down the mountain with glad news. The invaders have been wiped out, and we are safe. O Judah, proclaim a day of thanksgiving and worship only the Lord, as you have vowed. For the enemy from Nineveh will never come again. He is cut off forever. He will never be seen again.
Good. Bad news for Nineveh is
Good news for them.
good news for Israel.
So here it says, this is going way back to verse 8.
Mm.
With an overwhelming flood, he will make an end of Nineveh. Period.
Yeah, what happened was
That was a really weird laugh. That's a new
Yeah.
one. I've never heard that one
Like
before.
chocolate.
Yeah.
next week. Hold on. Next week we're going to show how the Babylonians defeated the Assyrians.
Cool.
Yeah, we'll look at how they got
Dam
defeated.
busters.
Yes. What's that?
Dam
Yeah.
busters.
And then we'll see later on how Persians defeated the Babylonians. Yeah.
Cool.
It's all about engineering. Ooh. Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate that. You know what? We got a couple more minutes. Let's just keep going, chapter 2, because we're riding the wave here. Henry, 2 verses 1 through 3. 2 is a short chapter. We may as well finish chapter 2 too. Chapter 2 verses 1 through 3.
The one who scatters has come up against you. Keep watch over the fortress. Watch the road. Bind up your waist. Come in all your strength, for the Lord will restore the splendor of Jacob. Like the splendor of Israel, even though destroyers have laid waste to them and ruined their vines.
So the Assyrians may have been hard on Israel, but God is going to be hard on the Assyrians. Verse 3, Henry.
The shields of his warriors are dyed red. The warriors were dressed in scarlet. The chariots are fitted with flashing steel. When he is prepared to march, and the
Yep.
spears are brandished.
Good. Held out. He's beginning now to describe the Babylonian Empire. The chariots race madly in the streets. They rush wildly in the squares. Remember? Chariots? Their appearance is like a torch, dashing to and fro like lightning flashes. He remembers his nobles. They stumble in their march. They hurry to the wall, to her wall, and the mantlet is set up. So the Babylonians are coming, quick, get to the wall, defend the wall, right? The gates of the river are open. We're going to see how this all fits together later on in history. And the palace is dissolved. It is fixed. She is stripped. She is carried away, and her handmaids are moaning like the sound of doves beating on their breasts. All right, we'll finish with 8, 9, and 10, and then Danny 11, 12, and 13.
Nineveh is like a pool, and its waters draining away. Stop, stop, they cry, but no one turns back. Plunder the silver, plunder the gold. The supply is endless, the wealth from all its treasures. She is pillaged, plundered, stripped. Hearts melt, knees give way, bodies tremble, every face grows pale. Where now is the lion's den, the place where they feed their young? Where the lion and lioness went, and the cubs with nothing to fear.
I'll just stop you. One of the hobbies of Assyrian kings, we didn't show in the relief, was they loved to lion hunt. So the lion was a symbol of Assyria, and that was the kind of their national animal, and so the lion is the Assyrian lion, and so kings prided themselves on their lion hunting. And what does Nahim say? The feeding place of the young lion where the lions and the lioness and the young cubs prowl, right? And Danny, 12 and 13, wrap up the book.
Killed enough for his cubs and strangled the prey for his mate, filling his lairs with the kill and his dens with the prey.
So Assyria is the lion.
I'm against you, declares the Lord Almighty. I will burn up your chariots in smoke, and a sword will devour your young lions. I will leave you no prey on the earth. The voices of your messengers will no longer be heard.
Good. And then chapter 3, verse 1, which Joyce read for us at the beginning, woe to the bloody city. All right, so next week we're going to look at the Babylonians and how they conquered the Assyrians and what became of them. But so, what do we do in the face of evil? Do we ever rejoice in the defeat of evil?
Well, we did here.
We sure did, yeah, we do. There is something in us, and when we see that level of great evil, now, are we delighting in it? But we delight in justice by our nature. Yeah. It's tough, isn't it?
It's a tricky one.
It
because
is, yeah, absolutely.
I'd say there's evil which does injustice, but then there's people who aren't necessarily evil that do injustice.
Like the guy who was the farmer, treading the land, he never went to war, right? His country did.
He's got to throw a sword and kill someone.
Yeah. You know, there were innocent people in Assyria too, right? And that becomes part of the dilemma. But this is written to Israel, who had been for so long persecuted by the Assyrians. And the Assyrians had done so much evil on the earth. And God says, enough is enough. And the time is coming when evil will be judged. This is echoes of the book of Revelation, right? When God comes back and judges the earth, and the evil is done away with. So, all right. Any other thoughts on the beginnings of the Assyrians in the book of Nahum?
You know, you talk about how there are demons that are so evil that they cannot be
Yeah.
let out, and yet looks like there was someone who got out during this time.
Yeah. And it's, you know, there are people that do just such great evil. You know, it's hard when you see stories in the news that you can't even imagine. You know.
They had no soul.
Yeah. What was her name? That girl in Ontario, her and her husband. Yeah. Anyhow. Yeah. How do we?
Oh, my brother that works in the jail.
Yeah.
He has stories too that when he was a prison guard, he said some guys were so evil there. He said you can't even look in their eyes.
Yeah.
Because he said there's something about them that's so evil.
Yeah.
And he had to stop working there eventually because he couldn't.
Yeah. It just
take that.
affects your
It
soul
does.
after a while,
It's so
doesn't it?
dark.
Yeah. To live in that dark.
Like the
Yeah.
farmer that, you know, got all these women and
Picton in BC.
put them all in the feed.
Yeah. Exactly.
Murdered all these girls and feed them to the pigs.
Yeah. Like.
That's just Robert.
Yeah. Robert Picton. Every once in a while you come across
And he
this.
is like,
Yeah. No remorse.
like a regular guy. Don't
Yep.
even know anything about him.
Yep.
You know?
No remorse.
But
He's-
probably, I think that was another one of those bad guys thinking he's doing a good thing or something like that, right?
You know how they caught him? They found him? Yeah.
It's like these kids up in BC where they took out these older person and young person and just drove away like nothing happened.
Yeah, no
Ontario
conscience.
and
Yeah, no conscience. Yeah, and God is a God of justice, right? You know, we often think the Old Testament God is the God of wrath, but there are elements of pure justice. The nation of Assyria had to be dealt with. Yeah. All right, we will continue on next week.